Hello everyone, welcome to Frightening Tales. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from, and if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax and dive into tonight's case. Story 1. In the underworld of crime, some cases haunt not just for their brutality but for details unraveling so sinister they force us to question whether evil truly wears a human face. A missing person is no longer a rarity. A body found weeks later isn't all that unusual, but a body left pristine save for a heart removed with eerie precision, that's something else entirely. It's a mystery no investigative file can fully unravel. The case of Beth Martin began like countless other disappearances. A young woman traveling with her husband and young daughter arrived in Turkey to soak in turquoise seas and golden sun, but within 2 days she was rushed to a hospital in critical condition and never woke up. Yet the true nightmare emerged when Beth's body was brought back to her homeland during a routine autopsy in England. Forensic pathologists uncovered a chilling truth: her heart was gone. This case doesn't just baffle investigators, it peels back the curtain on shadowy dealings within the medical industry. A string of eerily similar unexplained deaths and the darker secrets harbored by those closest to the victim, perhaps even those she trusted most. On the morning of August 15, 2019, dawn's first light beat the coastline of Antalya, a renowned tourist paradise in Turkey. At the upscale Crystal Bay Resort, the front desk received an urgent call from room 308 at 7:43 a.m. A man's voice, frantic and halting, stammered, "My wife, she collapsed in the bathroom, please help." The call was recorded, and within 4 minutes the hotel's in-house medical team arrived. They found a man, Daniel Martin, 32 years old, slumped against the bathroom door, hands trembling, repeating over and over, "She's not breathing, I don't know what happened." Beth was discovered face down on the cold marble floor, clad in a thin nightgown, her hair drenched, her pulse was faint, her breathing non-existent, her heart had stopped. Paramedics rushed her to an ambulance within 10 minutes, but by 8:32 a.m. upon arrival at Antalya General Hospital, Beth was pronounced dead. The attending physician, Dr. Simeon, filled out the death certificate. Preliminary cause of death: sudden cardiac arrest. Unknown origin, no external injuries, no signs of violence, no toxins detected in initial tests. Turkish authorities deemed it a sudden, non-suspicious death. Beth Martin's body was transferred to the hospital morgue awaiting consular procedures. The case seemed closed until the smallest details began to crack the facade. For one, the timeline of Beth's death didn't align with Daniel's account. He claimed she collapsed moments after he stepped out of the room, but hallway security footage showed Daniel leaving at 6:58 a.m. and not returning until nearly 7:48 a.m. a gap far too long for an urgent emergency response. Stranger still, no screams or cries for help were reported from neighboring rooms despite Beth's alleged sudden collapse in the bathroom. Most damningly, when medics arrived, Daniel hadn't performed a CPR, despite later claiming he did everything he could to save her. Within a mere 12 hours, the hospital finalized its report, an unusually swift process for an unexplained death. Beth's family in England received a curt notification that she had passed away suddenly while on vacation, but Rachel Martin, Beth's younger sister, refused to accept the vague explanation. Beth was healthy, she never fainted, never complained about her heart, so why sudden cardiac arrest, and why didn't Daniel call us immediately? Driven by fierce determination, Rachel contacted lawyers and consular officials demanding Beth's body be repatriated for a second autopsy. That bold decision would unveil a horrifying truth, one that neither Turkish authorities nor anyone else could have anticipated. On August 22, 2019, Beth Martin's body was flown from Turkey to England at her family's Request. After a week of tangled consular paperwork and unsettling silence from Daniel Martin, Beth finally returned to her hometown in Nottinghamshire. Per UK law, any death abroad with an unclear cause must undergo an independent forensic autopsy. Senior forensic pathologist Dr. Louise Morrow, who led the examination, described the moment she opened Beth's chest cavity as utterly chilling. She recalled the heart was gone completely absent. The chest cavity was hollow, nothing but fibrous tissue and dried serum remained bizarrely there. Were no external injuries to the thorax, no surgical incisions. It was as if someone had removed the heart without ever cutting the chest open, an impossibility by medical standards. Beth's body bore no large incisions, typical of autopsies, no sutures, no Y-shaped sternal cut. The skin over her chest was intact save for a faint line near her collarbone, initially mistaken for an old scar or minor scratch, but under a microscope it revealed something else: a razor-thin, meticulously precise incision closed with sophisticated microsurgical stitching, a technique so advanced it's rarely seen outside specialized facilities and nearly invisible without in-depth examination. The remaining organs, liver, lungs, kidneys, sat untouched in their natural positions, showing no signs of interference, yet the entire network of arteries and veins connected to the heart had been severed with surgical precision. Not a single tear, not a trace of abnormal blood pooling, a fact leading to one inescapable conclusion: someone had deliberately removed Beth's heart, and they had done so with chilling expertise. When informed, Beth's family was utterly devastated. Rachel Martin, her younger sister, couldn't fathom what she was hearing. She initially believed it must be a medical error. How could a heart vanish from a body without leaving any trace? But as she reviewed the X-rays and scans, Rachel faced a horrifying reality. Between the lungs, where a heart should have been, there was only a void, no heart. As if something or someone had cruelly stolen that vital organ. The Antalya Hospital in Turkey, where Beth was first admitted, had no records of performing an autopsy. When UK authorities requested forensic reports and archived imaging, the hospital provided a scant 2-page document with a conclusion so simplistic it defied belief: cardiac arrest, unknown cause, no autopsy required due to absence of criminal suspicion. This lack of transparency only deepened the mystery. As the shocking revelation reached Beth's family, they turned to the press. On September 1, 2019, The Guardian broke the story with a haunting headline: British woman dies in Turkey, heart mysteriously missing after repatriation. Within 48 hours the news spread like wildfire. Dozens of international outlets, from the BBC and Daily Mail to Le Monde and The New York Times, picked up the story, splashing chilling headlines: tourist dies on holiday, who took her heart, Beth Martin, and Europe's organ trafficking shadow, and a heartless corpse. Questions linger over global forensics. The world recoiled at the bizarre and gruesome case. Under relentless media pressure, the UK Foreign Office issued a formal diplomatic note demanding a thorough re-investigation of Beth's body handling in Turkey. Simultaneously, a domestic probe into transnational organ trafficking was launched in the UK. Beth's family, consumed by grief and fury, no longer sought mere answers. They demanded justice. Above all, they wanted to unravel the ghastly enigma: where did Beth's heart go, and what was the motive behind it? Before becoming the centerpiece of a baffling case that rocked global headlines, Beth Martin was an ordinary woman, almost strikingly unremarkable. She wasn't a celebrity, didn't court attention on social media, and was far from the type to attract trouble. Yet sometimes tragedy strikes the quietest lives. To understand the shock of the missing heart, we must return to the beginning. A literature teacher from England, a young wife dreaming of motherhood, and a trip meant to rekindle a fading spark amid silent rifts. Born in 1990 in Nottingham, Beth grew up in a modest family of 4. Her father, Michael Martin, was a retired postal worker, sidelined early by a spinal condition, while her mother, Eleanor, worked as a nurse in a small clinic. From a young age, Beth was calm, Reserved and deeply attuned to others' emotions, she spent hours reading in her room, captivated by the classics of Jane Austen. Virginia Woolf and Sylvia Plath, classmates, described Beth as the girl with sad eyes, intelligent, polite, but always keeping a measured distance. She shunned parties, avoided the spotlight, and rarely shared personal details. Her introversion seemed an inseparable part of who she was. After earning a degree in English literature from the University of Sheffield, Beth returned to Nottingham and became a high school teacher. She taught literature at a public school, earning students' affection with her gentle, emotive teaching style that encouraged independent thinking. In 2015, Beth married Daniel Martin, a financial advisor at an insurance firm. They met at a book fair where Beth was managing a booth for classic literature. Their wedding was understated. Without fanfare to outsiders, they were a stable couple, unremarkable, with no apparent issues, but friends and family noted Beth often dodged questions about her husband, and their marriage grew eerily quiet over time. In June 2018, Beth and Daniel planned their first trip together since their wedding. They chose Antalya, Turkey, a sun-drenched coast famed for its luxurious Mediterranean resorts. Daniel told friends the trip was to spend time together, but Beth's family suspected she was under strain from both her job and a growing distance in her marriage. Beth shared little about the trip save for a brief text to her sister: "I'm going away for a bit, hoping to catch my breath. Don't worry if I'm offline." No one knew it would be her final message as news of the missing heart exploded. Nottinghamshire Police, in coordination with the UK Foreign Office, launched a criminal investigation into Beth Martin's death. The first and only person present at the scene quickly became the focus of scrutiny: her husband Daniel Martin. During his initial questioning, Daniel remained eerily composed. He stuck to his original story. That morning, Beth felt unwell after swimming and returned to their room to rest. Daniel claimed he woke around 7 a.m. while she was showering. He then left for a walk, grabbed coffee in the hotel lobby, and returned to find Beth motionless on the bathroom floor. He called for help immediately. Daniel insisted he heard no unusual sounds, no screams, no banging, and assumed she had fainted, but hallway security footage from the third floor revealed a glaring contradiction. Daniel was recorded leaving the room at 6:58 a.m. wearing a dark t-shirt and shorts. He didn't return until 7:48 am, nearly 40 minutes later, despite claiming he was gone for only 10 to 15 minutes. No one else entered or exited the room during that time. When asked where he'd been, Daniel fumbled, saying he wandered the resort grounds, his mind blank, without his phone. Yet police data extracted from his phone showed it was completely powered off during that period, a detail suggesting deliberate concealment. Digging into Daniel's financial history, investigators uncovered troubling signs. Just 6 weeks before the Turkey trip, Daniel had finalized a life insurance policy for Beth with a Manchester-based firm. The policy, worth £400,000, named Daniel as the sole beneficiary. Notably, it took effect on July 1, 2019, and Beth died on August 15, 2019. Only 45 days later, the insurance company was poised to pay out, absent a criminal finding thrusting Daniel into the investigation's crosshairs. From a school teacher with modest savings, Daniel stood to gain nearly £500,000. Within weeks of his wife's death, Beth's family insisted Beth hated anything to do with insurance. She'd never signed something like that willingly, though the policy bore Beth's electronic signature. The timing and circumstances of its execution raised red flags, fueling suspicions of forgery or coercion. Doubts about Daniel Martin mounted his unaccounted time at the hotel, the hefty insurance policy signed mere weeks before, and his unnervingly calm demeanor after his wife's tragic death all painted him as the prime suspect. Yet one question stalled the investigation: if Daniel was responsible, how could he have removed Beth's heart without leaving surgical traces? Especially in a crowded hotel lacking medical equipment, this Enigma forced investigators to pivot. If the hotel wasn't the crime scene, the answer might lie elsewhere, perhaps at the Turkish hospital that handled Beth's body before repatriation. As police probed the medical facility, they soon realized the irregularities didn't end in the hotel room. They extended through the hospital's corridors into the morgues, cold storage, and to a doctor who had vanished without a trace. Mamraz Hospital, a private medical center on Nala's outskirts, was where Beth was taken after Daniel's emergency call. Their initial report cited acute cardiac stroke as the cause of death with no signs of violence, and claimed the case was handled per medical protocol. The body was moved to the hospital morgue within 2 hours, embalmed and prepared for repatriation to the UK. Yet when British authorities demanded medical records, photographs, and comprehensive autopsy reports, Mamura's Son Hospital delivered a bare-bones PDF and signed, devoid of staff IDs and lacking any endoscopic images or X-rays. The so named in the report was Dr. Emrea, noted as the physician on duty. When Beth was admitted via Interpol, UK police promptly requested Turkish authorities to summon Kaya for clarification on the body handling procedures. The response from Antalya police was troubling. Dr. Emrea took an extended leave of absence immediately after Beth's death and is now untraceable. Hospital records showed Ka left his post just 24 hours after signing Beth's death certificate, then vanished entirely. His family claimed he departed for a mountain retreat, after which all contact ceased. The uncanny timing of a doctor's disappearance following the processing of a heartless corpse led both UK and Turkish investigators to suspect ties to an organ trafficking syndicate. This was reinforced by Turkey's recurring presence in recent UN reports on illicit organ harvesting in private clinics. A bombshell emerged when a Camorra Daily journalist posing as a medical worker infiltrated Marmara Sands morgue. Leaked images revealed body storage units marked with codes rather than names, with at least 2 corpses lacking any identifying documents. An anonymous source confided, voice thick with dread. This isn't the first time bodies were processed without a trace. It's always done cleanly and terrifyingly fast. As the threads wove together, Daniel's dubious 40-minute absence, the heart's eerie vanishing, and now a doctor evaporating into the night. The Beth Martin case crystallized into a waking nightmare. This was no mere travel tragedy, but a chilling international plot shrouded in secrecy. Beth's heart wasn't merely an organ, it was the linchpin to exposing a monstrous crime. British police forwarded forensic reports and imaging from Nottingham to Europol's unit on transnational medical crimes. Weeks later, a chilling database match froze investigators. The technique of endoscopic surgery, leaving minimal incisions, coupled with bodies repatriated after pre-uncture exams, mirrored at least 6 other cases over the past 3 years. Each shared a grim pattern. Victims died in Mediterranean nations, were processed in private hospitals, and had organs inexplicably removed. Of these, 3 victims were Europeans who died in Turkey, 2 in Greece, and 1 in Egypt. Alarmingly, all were handled by hospitals linked to the same private medical network, including Marmar's Son. This was no fluke, but proof of a highly organized criminal system spanning the Mediterranean. A Europol source explained these aren't spontaneous organ thefts like in the movies. It's a slick operation. Some target victims, others process bodies, and a third group ships organs to market, often in affluent Middle Eastern countries. Organs could fetch staggering sums. A healthy heart from a young disease-free woman like Beth could easily sell for $250,000 on the black market. A leaked probe by the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project (ACRP) revealed more. Several Turkish private hospitals were suspected of concealing organ harvesting from foreigners who died suddenly. They issued hasty death certificates, restricted family access, and processed bodies in under 24 hours. These acts exploited legal gaps in autopsy protocols for foreign tourists, particularly when no criminal suspicion was initially raised. A harrowing twist surfaced when police traced a dark web account. Nightingale Heart 88. Peddling organs. A decrypted message mentioned a healthy heart. Female 28 code 0728TK, eerily aligning with Beth's death date. More troubling, the account had connected to a temporary IP address traced to the hotel where Beth and Daniel stayed, though the IP later disappeared. It had accessed a cryptocurrency wallet receiving $250,000. $3 days after Beth's death. The searing question shifted. Was Daniel the husband Beth trusted implicitly complicit in selling her heart for profit despite worldwide media frenzy? The Beth Martin investigation stalled in a maddeningly cold dead end. Daniel Martin, the chief suspect, was never charged. His attorney insisted no solid evidence linked him to any crime. He may seem suspicious, even detached, the lawyer told reporters, but there's no blood, no fingerprints, no video of him harming his wife, though the questionable financial records, unexplained 40-minute absence, and cryptocurrency transaction matching a heart's black market value were damning. Authorities labeled them speculation lacking legal weight in Turkey DR. After Emmer remained a phantom, an international warrant was issued, but no records confirmed his legal departure from the country. Some theorized the trafficking network eliminated him to sever loose ends, compounding the mystery. Marmara Sun Hospital shuttered abruptly months after Beth's case, citing financial hardship. Its owner vanished. Disturbingly, all patient files, staff records and financial logs were deliberately wiped before authorities could investigate. In Nottingham, Beth's family battled on in despair. They sent dozens of petitions to human rights organizations and international bodies begging for a reinvestigation. They also established a fund in Beth's name to aid families of those who died mysteriously abroad. Losses left unresolved. We can't lay her to rest properly because her heart isn't in that coffin. Her mother, Eleanor Martin, wept in an interview in July 2022. For years after Beth's death, an anonymous email reached Nottinghamshire police. It included a grainy endoscopic image of a heart in a glass jar paired with a chilling note code 0728TK, the heart that never forgets. Traced to a Belarus server, the sender vanished. Was it a cruel hoax or a final taunt from an underworld trading human hearts? Despite relentless efforts, justice remains out of reach. No convictions, no culprits held accountable. Daniel Martin, the enigmatic husband, lives freely in a tranquil northern English village, avoiding media and maintaining an eerie silence. Dr. Amir Kaya is still missing, with no legal trace of leaving Turkey, sparking speculation he was silenced by the trafficking ring. Most hauntingly, Beth Martin's heart remains an unsolved enigma. The Beth Martin case raises a global alarm about illicit organ trafficking, while her status as a crime victim is unconfirmed. The mere absence of her heart stirs deep public dread. The World Health Organization has flagged the growing complexity of organ trafficking and transplant tourism. Nations with advanced medical systems, like Turkey, must guard against criminals preying on vulnerable foreign patients. This case may drive international efforts to tighten oversight of transplant and forensic processes, ensuring human organs save lives, not become commodities. Beth's story transcends the horror of a covert crossbar scheme. It is a sobering reminder of life's fragility, the chilling voids and legal frameworks, and the vital need for compassion. Your heart beats today. Can you be certain it will tomorrow? Beth Martin is gone, but her story endures. A choir polls urging that no matter how callous the world grows, justice and humanity must prevail even when a heart falls silent. Story 2. The level of the offender's culpability in the commission of the offense is so extreme that the community interest in retribution, punishment, community protection and deterrence can only be met by a sentence of life imprisonment. The manner in which he killed her was cruel, merciless and abhorrent. The offender's crime falls within the worst category of murder. Today's case takes us to Sydney, Australia, and back to April 27, 2010. 6:30 30 p.m. The streets around Chatswood were peaceful. People were coming home from work and getting ready to settle in for the evening. That was until the desperate screams of a woman shattered the stillness. A couple walking their dog along Holland Street went over to investigate. They saw a man wearing a green hooded jacket and carrying a backpack running away from the house the screaming had come from. They had tried to challenge him, but he quickly ran off and disappeared. As the couple moved closer to the house, they found a woman on the verge. She had suffered horrific injuries, and it was clear that nothing could be done to save her. Michelle Beets had been murdered on her own doorstep. Michelle had just arrived home from work at the Royal North Shore Hospital. She had been born in New Zealand and attended Epsom Girls' Grammar School in Auckland, and later worked in the heart department at Green Lane Hospital. Since moving to Sydney, she had worked in the emergency department at Royal North Shore Hospital for 25 years. And the past 10 years had been as a nurse unit manager. As with all jobs in healthcare, it was extremely hard and stressful. It was long hours with massive workloads, but Michelle took it all in her stride. She was described as quiet and reserved, but she didn't take nonsense from anyone. Michelle was very popular and well respected amongst her peers. This was what made the news of her murder so hard to process. Who on earth would want to hurt her and hurt her so violently? Police thought maybe she had disturbed someone robbing her house, but this theory was quickly shot down. The electricity to her house had been cut off deliberately at a junction box by the front door. This meant that both the outdoor sensor light and the alarm system to the property had been disabled. Her shed door also appeared to have been tampered with. She had been ambushed in a planned attack. Her throat had been cut and she had been stabbed multiple times in her chest, head and throat before being left to bleed to death on her veranda. The police began looking into the personal records of staff members at the hospital. Michelle had reported drugs being stolen and a member of staff had been fired as a result. Maybe a disgruntled former colleague would have a clues. More than 20 markers led away from the property, heading along the foot path in the direction of Johnson Street. It was reported that they indicated the path her killer had taken as he ran away. The police also appealed for the public's help in tracking down this man. Michelle's day had been a typical one. She had gone to work and then stopped to get groceries. On the way back to the home she shared with her partner David, who was very quickly ruled out as being involved. Chatswood was a low-crime area. It was a safe neighborhood, so people were understandably stunned and very frightened, and for her colleagues at the hospital, they were completely crushed. New South Wales Health called her a valued and esteemed colleague, friend and mentor. She was an exemplary nurse, a dear friend and teammate. We are devastated by her loss. Dr. Robert Day, the deputy director of the emergency department she worked in, said the department had lost a friend and leader. There was speculation that a patient with mental health problems had killed her, but the police were quick to dispute that that is not correct. Superintendent Terence Dalton said it's an ongoing homicide investigation. Police are looking into the victimology of the victim, which includes looking into her complete background, everything about her. A number of her work colleagues have been interviewed thus far. Statements have been taken. Her family have been spoken to, and the police will continue along those lines of inquiry. They also shut down rumors that David was in protective custody on the night she was killed. She was due to have dinner with David and an old friend, Fran, someone she had grown up with. Fran was over in Australia for a dragon boat racing competition, and they had arranged to meet up and have a long overdue catch-up. He would cancel the dinner and return to New Zealand, and he was left in total shock when he found out what had happened to his friend. The gruesome way she died is unbelievable, he said in speaking to People. One name had come up. Michelle had told people she worked with at the hospital that a man had been starting to freak her out. 48-year-old Walter Marsh. Walter Marsh was a former U.S. Marine. He had worked at the Royal North Shore Hospital with Michelle. He had arrived in Sydney in February the previous year and had a 12-month contract with the hospital. He said that he could remember seeing Michelle a few times while he worked there, but he said they hadn't fallen out or anything of the sort, but upon digging further this didn't appear to be true. He had been on a 12-month contract, but in early 2010 this hadn't been renewed. He blamed Michelle for this. He believed that she had given him bad references which stopped him from finding further employment. He needed a job to be able to stay in Australia. He didn't want to go back to the United States as he had a massive child support bill waiting for him. He was a firm person of interest, and he certainly did seem to have a motive for wanting to hurt Michelle. Walter had gone back to the hospital just a few days after the murder, but this time as a patient, as he had suffered a seizure. Her colleagues were treating the man they knew was the prime suspect in her killing. Even though his name and identity were not being released at this point, he did continue to speak to the media, who blurred his face. He denied any involvement. Did you kill Michelle Bates? No, he said he liked Michelle and he enjoyed the people he worked with. I enjoyed the eclectic mix of personalities and thought we all got along wonderfully, he said. He added that he thought he was being targeted because he was not Australian. He was adamant that he was innocent. He said the police had made up their minds that he was involved, but he had nothing to do with it. I'm not a killer and I certainly would never harm a woman, he said. The police think that just because I have a military background that I am a killer. I'm not. He said that Michelle had been the one to interview him over the phone when he was in America for the job, and she had sponsored his visa. He said that although his contract hadn't been renewed, this hadn't jeopardized his visa, and he bore no grudge towards Michelle. His apartment was also searched over the course of 3 days, hoping that vital clues or evidence would be found. He said that on the night of the murder he had met his wife at a nearby train station at around 7 p.m. after she had finished work, and they had gone home together. But how did he account for the fact that there was CCTV footage of him throwing a backpack away into a bin at a local shopping center? I was always going to throw away that bag, it's no big deal, he said. To try and find the backpack, the police searched through tons of rubbish across various sites but found nothing. Even though the police had spoken to him twice, there was not enough evidence to charge him, but that would soon change. The investigation into Walter continued and the police finally got the lead they had been looking for. He was taken to the station for a third time. Did you know where she lived? No. You ever been to her house? No. Were you ever trying to use knives? No. In his police interview, Walter Marsh said he was astounded when he heard about the murder of his former boss. I was horrified. I was terrified that somebody would do that. Did you murder Michelle Woods? No. The officers also spoke to his wife. She said that on the night of the murder, just half an hour after the fact, he had said to her, I did it, it's done, the __ is gone, no more bad references. He also practiced throat-slitting techniques on his wife and brother-in-law, techniques used by the Marines to kill someone quickly and quietly. Walter Marsh was subsequently arrested at his Lane Cove apartment, and 3 weeks after the killing he was charged with the murder of Michelle Bates. He was refused bail. A former U.S. Marine will stand trial for the murder of Michelle Bates. Walter Marsh is accused of killing the nursing manager with a knife at her Chatswood home in April. His wife and brother-in-law gave evidence against him at a committal hearing. They said he practiced his knife technique at home and hated his former boss. A magistrate today referred the case to trial in the Supreme Court. Michelle's brother Marty said the news of him being charged was fantastic. Of course we must now see justice do its course. We just have to let the be long until it goes to court that you're believing it's happening. Michelle's father Robbie said he was happy with the news but did express enormous empathy for Walter's family too. I feel sorry for Mr. Marsh's wife and for his family in the U.S. I hope the trial will be speedy, correct, and come to a proper end, he said. Walter Marsh, a 49-year-old former U.S. Marine, is due to face a committal hearing next month. He hasn't yet entered a plea to the charge of murder. Documents tended to the court say that Walter Marsh's wife and brother-in-law are due to testify against him. The papers reveal that the case against Mr. Marsh will include admissions he allegedly made to his wife about the killing. Walter had no reply to the charges and the judge accepted this silence as a plea of not guilty, meaning that this would be going to trial. He was also found to not have any substantial impairment or mental illness. The man accused of murdering Sydney nurse Michelle Beats is on life support after a failed suicide attempt. Walter Marsh was rushed to hospital on Saturday morning after he was found in his prison cell with his wrists and throat cut. A suicide note was reportedly also found in the cell. Marsh is alleged to have stalked and then killed Michelle Beats at her Chatswood home in April this year after the attempt on his life had failed, and he was released from hospital. The trial of Walter Marsh would begin. It would emerge that Walter had actually been planning this and stalking Michelle for weeks. He had observed her house to work out what security systems she may have had and what the layout inside was. Walter wanted to know what her pattern and her routine was, so he would call her home phone multiple times each day from Payaneses to see when she usually got back. She even saw him on her street on one occasion. This was why she had told colleagues he was really starting to freak her out on the day of the murder. Michelle had changed her routine. Instead of driving into her driveway, she had backed in instead, meaning that she had come face to face with him. He had sat in wait with a balaclava over his face. He even had his knife sharpened in preparation. It also emerged that he had asked his brother-in-law to go with him to Michelle's house to keep watch for him, and he had also bought clothes from a second-hand store to wear specifically during the murder. He had told her that if she stopped screaming he wouldn't hurt her, but he then slit her throat using the technique he had learned in the military and repeatedly stabbed her. The prosecution argued that Walter had developed a deep resentment and hatred of Michelle, as he believed that she had given him bad references which had stopped him from finding a job. He had referred to her as AF*King__ on more than one occasion and said she needed to be gone. Michelle's partner David Grant was there for the start of the trial, which he says presents the opportunity for justice. Investigators claim Marsh had cut off the power to the house and broken a back door to make it look like a break-in. This is the couple that discovered Michelle Beats' bloody body on her front doorstep last year. Carmel and Gordon B. Venon had been walking down Holland Street when they say they heard a woman scream, then the sound of slapping. Mr. Venon said when he felt for Miss Beats' pulse, he felt the gash in her neck. He says she turned towards him as if she was trying to speak. Then after they made eye contact she died. The couple are two of 70 witnesses expected to be called in the trial of Walter Marsh. The two key witnesses in the trial are Marsh's Vietnamese wife Samantha and her brother. The jury heard 3 weeks after the incident. Samantha told police Marsh had confessed. The court heard Samantha Marsh and her brother had reason to lie after cooperating with police. They both received protection from prosecution for concealing a serious offense. Mrs. Marsh also received a visa to stay in Australia and money for accommodation. The jury was shown security camera footage which showed a man walking around Chatswood in the hour following the murder. Detective Senior Constable Scott Bennett, who worked on the case, took the jury through the footage, which started at around 6:30 p.m. The man was dressed in a white shirt with black bottoms and was carrying both a bum bag and a plastic bag as he walked west on Victoria Avenue and headed into the Chatswood shopping center. He went into an accessible toilet and then into the men's toilet before going to the food court and putting things into the rubbish bin. Scott Bennett said that Walter had significantly altered his appearance since his arrest, but he believed he was the man on the footage. Police claimed Marsh was captured on CCTV at Chatswood Chase Shopping Center about an hour after the alleged murder, but his lawyer told the court the figure in the video may not be his client. adding the place is well lit with people around and whoever committed that murder would have been covered in blood. The court heard that Walter, who had been born in Belfast, had told his wife that he had permission to kill from an organization. His wife said that around a month before the murder he had said, "Finally I got permission from the organization in Ireland to kill Michelle Beats." Samantha Marsh says about a week before the death her husband bought a set of unusual clothes, some shoes and a pair of rubber gloves. Ms. Marsh said she saw her husband wear the outfit once but then never saw the clothes or the gloves again. Ms. Marsh added on the 27th of April last year her husband told her he'd changed in a nearby garage, then got rid of his old clothes, the gloves and the knife. It also emerged that in the weeks before Michelle's murder Walter had been plotting another one, that of his ex-wife back in the United States. The prosecutor said he had flown back to America with the intention of murdering his first wife because of his unpaid $50,000 child support bill, but ultimately it didn't happen and he didn't kill his ex-wife. It shows some degree of pre-planning. The prosecutor said he thought he would solve the problem by murdering his ex-wife, then it turned to murdering Michelle Beats. In November the jury had reached their guilty verdict in the trial of the man accused of murdering Sydney nurse Michelle Beats. 10's Gabrielle Bowl has been following the case and she joins us now. Gabrielle, Walter Marsh has always maintained his innocence, so how did he react to this conviction when the guilty verdict was handed down? A loud round of applause erupted from the public gallery. The family and friends of Michelle Beats were clearly absolutely delighted with the result. It has to be said, though, the reaction of the murderer was quite bizarre to say the very least. He smiled, he giggled, he joked with his lawyer, he acted very casual, he took repeated sips of water, sat back in the dock and looked very relaxed as he was led away to his cell. Interestingly, he made a tut motion to the victims' friends and family. What exactly that was meant to mean perhaps we will never know. After an unimaginable loss, a small measure of relief for the family and friends of Michelle Beats. I'm personally very relieved with the result today. It's been a long, hard 18 months for myself, Michelle's family and friends. We just want you to know what a beautiful, wonderful person she was, and she so sadly missed the face of a killer with no remorse. Justice Derek Price said nothing other than the maximum penalty was appropriate for his barbaric crime. The level of the offender's culpability in the commission of the offense is so extreme that the community interest in retribution, punishment, community protection and deterrence can only be met by a sentence of life imprisonment. He told his wife that he wanted to confront Miss Beats by pretending to distribute Mormon books and by wearing a Mormon uniform to freak her out and scare her. However, his intention became an intention to kill. The manner in which he killed her was cruel, merciless and abhorrent. The offender's crime falls within the worst category of murder. I'm just happy that he's off the streets and can't cause any more harm to anyone else. I agree with Justice Price that it certainly was in the worst category. It's unclear if Walter Marsh was even listening to what was being said inside court. He ignored a request by the judge for him to stand for his final sentence and had to be prompted by his lawyer. Marsh could appeal against the severity of his sentence, but David Grant says he hopes today's judgment will see any such challenge fail. Carl her ABC News Sydney, this wasn't just a victory for her family but also for the police who would help bring him to justice. Although nothing was going to bring Michelle back, knowing that the person who had killed her would now spend the rest of his life behind bars did bring some degree of comfort. As previously said, Walter Marsh had been speaking to the media, and one of them was journalist Clementine Cuneo, and she had an extraordinary story to tell about her interactions with Walter Marsh over 2 weeks. In March last year, I formed an uncomfortable bond with Marsh. We spoke often over the phone as he repeatedly denied he was the killer. Then one Tuesday, as I visited the hairdresser, he called again. He said he needed to tell me something and that it wasn't particularly good. As he spoke, he began explaining to me that when people are desperate they do desperate things. He rambled incoherently for a few minutes, but I kept listening, keen to work out what he was on about. I needed the money, Marsh said. Then the penny dropped. I asked Marsh, Walter, what are you saying to me? He replied, I had to do it. I had to do it for the money. At that moment I realized I was hearing the confession of a killer. I told him he shouldn't be telling me this, that he must call the police. He went on, I have cancer, so I'm going to die anyway. My wife wants to go back to Vietnam to start a business. The money is for her. It was a contract killing. Marsh tried to convince me. I cut the conversation short. I felt completely uncomfortable and quite scared by what I'd been told, and I called the police. That night I received 2 more calls from Marsh urging me to meet him. I agreed and went to his home briefly the next morning with a photographer. What I wasn't aware of at the time was police were already interviewing Marsh's wife and brother-in-law. Their evidence plus Marsh's phone call to me was enough to arrest and charge him with murder. For years after he was convicted, Walter Marsh launched an appeal against his sentence. The aim was to get the term reduced to a minimum of 24 years. His lawyers argued that certain evidence surrounding his training with using knives whilst in the Marine Corps should not have been admitted in the trial. There are no striking similarities between the method Marsh was allegedly taught to inflict and the wounds inflicted upon the deceased. It was argued. It was also argued that the sentence of life was manifestly excessive. They said there had been no torture prior to the murder, no sexual motive, no more than one victim, and Walter had a clean criminal record. Justice Harrison said that the murder demonstrated a high level of planning and was clearly a sustained and merciless attack upon an innocent and defenseless victim. These matters combined to raise the awful specter of future dangerousness to the community. He said for those reasons the appeal was rejected and the original sentence stood. Speaking outside court, David said he was relieved by the outcome. April 2020, 59-year-old Walter Marsh was found dead in his cell at Lithgow Correctional Center. He was found at 8:20 a.m. and no cause of death was immediately given, but it was later reported he had taken his own life. Michelle Beat's funeral had been attended by more than 1,000 people. It was clear just how much of an impact she had had in her community following her death. The Michelle Beats Award for Inspirational Pediatric Care was founded. It aims to recognize the achievement of individuals who go above and beyond to advance children's health in New South Wales, adding, though her life was tragically cut short, Michelle's legacy continues to live on. Her legacy lives on not just in the award but in the lives she touched throughout her many years in healthcare. Every patient she cared for, every colleague she supported and helped, every act of kindness and selflessness she displayed, they are echoes of a life spent in service to others. And while justice was done and may bring some degree of peace, it is her compassion, her dedication and her humanity that continue to endure. Story 3. The rural town of Grubbs in Jackson County, Arkansas. It's small. Everyone knows everyone, with families living there for generations. With a population of just over 300 people, there's a real sense of community and safety. Grubbs was home to 25-year-old Sydney Sutherland, born to Maggie and Dion. Sydney was the youngest of 3. Her 2 older brothers, Tyler and Sam, were super protective of her, and Maggie said she and Sydney were best friends. They did everything together and spoke many times a day. Sydney was described as bright and outgoing with a huge smile to match. She lived with her boyfriend of 4 years, Alex, and loved long walks with her dogs, working out, shopping and spending time with her young nieces, who called her Aunt Sassy. Her best friend Jordan said no one knew their friends like she did. Sydney knew exactly what you needed and when you needed it. She had graduated school as an outstanding senior and her yearbook quote read, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." And that really summed up who she was supporting, uplifting and Compassionate, something which fit her job as a nurse at the Harris Medical Center perfectly in the fall of 2020. Sydney and her family had a nice summer break to Dest, Florida, returning home on August 18. The following day, footage of Sydney from her Ring cameras showed her getting some things out of her car. She was wearing her workout clothes, having just been at the gym for an hour with her trainer. She had been unpacking from her trip, getting ready to be back at work, and went to visit Maggie to drop off some of her mail. She told her she was heading home to bake some brownies or cookies and wanted to get a run in as well. Her mom told her not to push herself and overdo it, but working out was a big part of Sydney's life. She did it almost every day, and even though she had already been to the gym a jog in this weather just to clear her head and have some time to herself was too tempting an opportunity to pass up. "Love you, I'll talk to you later," she said as she walked out the door. "I love you too," Maggie shouted back. Sydney got home, set up her Apple Watch, and left her house. A UPS driver saw her jogging in the area of State Highway 18 between Newport and Grubbs at around 2:33 p.m. He remembered her clearly because there was seldom else going on down these roads. No other cars, no people, just a few houses and farms around. It really was as rural as it got. A couple of hours passed and Alex, who was home, was starting to worry. He hadn't heard from Sydney. He'd called Maggie, but she hadn't heard anything since she left her house. Her phone was going to voicemail. Her Snapchats hadn't been opened in hours and not a single text had been answered. There was no two ways about it. Something bad must have happened. This was just not like her, nor would she have ever wanted anyone to worry. Had she hurt herself and was lying injured somewhere, or had something far more sinister happened? Grubbs really wasn't a place where much crime happened at all. It was just that kind of town. So as it got darker and colder, the police got to work and the search instantly started off in a big way. By 7:00 a.m. the next morning, Sydney's family, along with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, the Arkansas Department of Correction, Arkansas State Police, U.S. Marshals, the FBI, and 3 other police stations had spread out and joined in during a short break for the search parties. Maggie spoke to one of the well-known farmers named Quake. He had been just a couple of years ahead of Sydney at school. He too said he had seen her jogging, but nothing had looked wrong. She definitely wasn't injured, and no one had been following her either on foot or by car. Search for a missing Jackson County woman involving multiple law enforcement agencies now, and it continues. 25-year-old Sydney Sutherland was last seen jogging off Highway 18. Here's her photograph. She was jogging between Newport and Grubbs. Claire Christ has been in Jackson County all day. She's joining us now with the latest on the search efforts there. Claire, what do we know about the search? How's it going? Has it turned up anything? Yeah, Bob County Road 41 is the last place Sydney Sutherland was seen. This is actually a typical jogging route for her. Now it's filled, you can see, filled with people driving up and down searching, trying to bring her back home safe. From the sky to boots on the ground, law enforcement from across the county and even the state are exhausting every option to find 25-year-old Sydney Sutherland. We're working every aspect that we can think of. According to Jackson County Sheriff David Lucas, Sutherland was last seen around 2:30 on this county road near her home. She was on foot, out walking and jogging. We received that information from a UPS driver this morning that saw her. Since then, no one has heard from her and no one knows what happened to her. We're not ruling anything out. Lucas says she did have her phone and they've tried to track its last known location with the phone pings that we've been getting from AT&T, plus the information from the people that said they saw her. It's pretty much going to be in that general area, and that's where we're concentrating the most right now. It's not just police and sheriff deputies searching the fields for anything out of the ordinary where somebody might have turned around out in a field with a truck or backed up in it. Weeds that are rolled over white-brown is helping with The search efforts on his day off, just helping people when they need help. He says he can't believe something like this happened in this small rural community. I was kind of shocked. Now he just hopes his and all the other volunteers' efforts break some ground on Sutherland's disappearance. So this area behind me is actually the staging area for the search. Sheriff Lucas says there are no solid leads at this time, so we ask if you know anything or if you've seen her or even think that you've seen her to please call the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Reporting live in Jackson County, Sydney had taken her phone and her Apple Watch with her, and pings from her phone showed the last area she was in, not at all far from where Quake and the UPS driver had seen her, and the next day they found her phone on the ground. It wasn't damaged and was less than a quarter of a mile away from her home. The next 24 hours were much the same. There were now around 300 volunteers involved, but the more everyone looked, the more the sick feeling in the pits of their stomachs was mounting. Sydney was a petite 5 feet 3 inches in and weighed 103 pounds. It wouldn't have been that hard to overpower her if she had been attacked or dragged into a car on one of the winding empty roads. Maggie, who had been going up and down the roads on her hands and knees unbelievably, found a small white bead. She knew it was from her daughter's bracelet. Anyone not out searching was putting vigils together. Her being missing had really brought this town to a standstill. On Friday, August 21st, the search resumed first thing in the morning, and the police announced they were working on several leads. And just a few hours later, thanks for joining us tonight at 10:00 everybody. I'm Bob Claw, and a suspect is in custody in the case of a missing jogger in Jackson County. The sheriff confirmed they had arrested a suspect in her disappearance. The person was not identified at the time, but they were transported into the Jackson County Jail. Later that afternoon, this missing persons case would become a different kind of investigation. Tonight, a heartbreaking ending for a search for a missing Jackson County woman. The Jackson County Sheriff confirming the body of 25-year-old Sydney Sutherland has been found. The body of Sydney Sutherland was found buried in a shallow hole in a field near to where everyone had been searching. The medical examiner found that her death was caused by multiple blunt force injuries. The Jackson County Sheriff David Lucas said Sydney's case and now finding her dead had taken a toll on him unlike any other case before. He said, "It hits me personally. I do know the family, know them well. I know Sydney, watched her grow up. She went to school with my girls. It's all about Sydney and remembering her, honoring the light that went dark. One thing about this community is when a tragedy happens, everybody comes out full force. It's been just days since Sydney Sutherland went for a run and never came home. In just days this community has been without the girl this crowd says was a friend to all, but instead of focusing on how she left this earth, they focus on what she left behind. She didn't have to have recognition. She didn't have to be in the front. She didn't have to be recognized for anything that she did. She was just a silent servant. She was a firecracker. She was sassy. She was loving. She was caring, compassionate. From candle to candle and memory to memory, folks say tonight Sydney Sutherland was honored. She's always been with us and she's in a better place. 2 days later, investigators named their suspect. It was none other than 28-year-old Quake Llewellyn, the same person that had told Maggie he had seen her running. He had also joined the Facebook groups, been in the search parties, and offered comfort to her family, even hugging Maggie. That feel like it was something felt odd. I walked back over to the group and I was like, something's wrong. Maggie recalled at the time she couldn't shake this weird feeling she got. Quake was a married local third-generation farmer with 3 stepchildren. He looked after about 6,000 acres of land, and many people knew him or of him, including Sydney's family. His family had even won the Jackson County Farm Family of the Year in 2016, so they were definitely well-known. Authorities confirmed that Sydney and Quake knew each other. The pair were once Facebook friends, but it was never specified how well they actually knew each other. Quake had actually put himself on the police's radar and in the investigation when he walked into the station and told them he may have been the last person to see her alive. Both he and his father gave detectives permission to search his pickup truck, and police immediately spotted blood on the tailgate. Using data from his phone, it put him in the vicinity of where Sydney's phone was found, and her body had been located right near his farm. They also watched CCTV footage from his house which showed him leaving in his truck and then returning a while later with a dent in it. Quake admitted he had hit her with his truck and then panicked that he was going to get into trouble. He said he accidentally hit her because a cloud of dust had obscured his vision. He said he put her into the truck, drove for a while before taking her clothes off, and in his words, messing with her before burying her. He told detectives that he put the clothes he was wearing when he killed her into a laundry basket at his mother's house, and during a search police took a black shirt with blonde hair on it and a pair of black and pink shorts amongst other items. Update to the killing of Sydney Sutherland. 28-year-old Quake Llewellyn has now been arraigned on charges of capital murder, rape and kidnapping. Those last two charges are new. Officials now say he not only killed Sutherland but that he also abducted and assaulted her last Wednesday. Llewellyn has not entered a plea in his case. THV11 will continue updating this story online and on the air. Quake was charged with capital murder, rape, kidnapping and abuse of a corpse. He pleaded not guilty and was soon deemed competent to stand trial if found guilty. Quake was facing the death penalty. His wife also filed for divorce, and police confirmed that she had absolutely nothing to do with what had happened to Sydney and had no idea her husband was capable of anything like this. One source that wanted to remain anonymous said Quakelin had always been someone to watch. He had been caught trying to peer into women's bedrooms and watch them change or shower, and had even gone as far as to stalk much younger girls he had become fixated on. He had allegedly harmed animals in such a sickening way. According to the Arkansas State Police, they believed he was traveling westbound on County Road 41 when he saw Sydney. He swiftly turned around, hit her on purpose, abducted her, put her into the back of his pickup truck and drove before sexually assaulting and burying her. Sydney's funeral had so many people that wanted to say goodbye and support the family. It was streamed live so everyone could be there. Quake maintained he didn't intentionally knock her over, but it was his word against what the prosecutors and police think actually happened that afternoon. Quake spoke to a psychologist when they were analyzing his mental health and whether he would be fit to stand trial. He told them he had just tried to forget about the murder as he resumed his routine, going to work like normal. He also allegedly said, "I knew I didn't kill her on purpose." Prosecutors discussed the idea of a plea deal with the Sutherland family, which they agreed to. They would take the death penalty off the table and agreed to dismiss the kidnapping and abuse of a corpse charges. The family wanted justice but also just needed everything to be over with, as little added trauma and extra time as possible. Amy Lovevan, Sydney's boyfriend's mom, said, "I hope that they don't press for the death penalty. I really hope that he gets into general population and gets life. Let people do to him in prison what they may." My husband said the death penalty is an easy way out for him. I hate him. I know that's an awfully strong word. I've never hated anybody in my whole life. One of these days I'll let that go for my own peace, as long as I'm feeling that way. Evil is winning and evil will not take me down. I won't ever forgive and I won't ever forget, but for my own good I'll have to let that part go. As part of the plea deal, Quake admitted in court to rape and capital murder. Maggie, Sydney's mom, gave a statement in the courtroom and asked Quake to look her right in the eyes as she spoke to him. "She was not yours to take. The hands you hugged me with are the same hands you killed her with. True justice for Sydney, my daughter, would be for her to be here. What you took away from us 408 days ago we'll never get again. Did she fight? You did. She cried. Did she ask for her brothers? Was it really worth it? I take pleasure in knowing that from this day forward You'll be known as a number with no name. He was given life in prison without parole. Any last words, any regrets today? A judge agreed to a plea deal that will send the man accused of killing a Jackson County woman to prison for the rest of his life. Today we have waited 408 days for Quake Llewellyn to be held accountable for my daughter's senseless murder. Maggie Sutherland says she never has to worry about Quake Llewellyn again. In a deal made to spare his life on Friday, Llewellyn pleaded guilty to capital murder and rape, a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Llewellyn's defense team tells me the death penalty could have been likely if it had gone to trial. Sydney's family chose life to offer us that, and I think that's always the best way to go, the defense calls it. A moment where Llewellyn owned up to his actions. They wanted to accept responsibility for what he had done. Tammy Watson, Llewellyn's distant cousin, left court in tears. I feel so sad for Sydney's family. Watson says her heart is broken because Llewellyn's parents lost their son today too. Quake's mother and father, they have been through so much. They're the ones that said go in there and you tell them the truth. Quake Llewellyn has answered for his horrendous actions. Maggie can go home with the last word. That afternoon Sydney went for a run in the warm weather down the road she had known like the back of her hand since she was a kid, and if she told anyone she was doing it that day, no one would have thought anything of it. How quickly everything changed and how much destruction it caused. To this day people still hold runs and events in honor of Sydney, mostly always wearing her favorite color pink. One is called Finish Sydney's Run and it happens annually. Lacing up for Sydney Sutherland and running to remember. I literally would just kind of replay over and over in my mind. You know, Sydney didn't get to finish this. Danielle Wright grew up with Sutherland and her family, and now she says she's going the extra mile to honor the nurse who loved a lot more than just running. It's all a part of a social media challenge called Finish Sydney's Run, going the distance and tagging others across the state to do the same. It does not have to end right here with her run. We can continue to do the things that Sydney loved to do. Wright says with every step on this 8.19-mile run she thinks of the friend who didn't make it home from hers. Her spirit is just soaring through every run, through every Facebook share. Her story is being told and people are wanting to know who is Sydney. So Wright says she hopes others will run too, striding every day to be more like Sydney. Sutherland, the overpass at Highway 67 and State Highway 167 near County Road 41 where she was running was renamed the Sydney Sutherland Memorial Overpass, and the bead that Maggie found on the ground during the searches lives on a bracelet on her wrist. The Sutherlands were working on creating a foundation in Sydney's name, and there's a scholarship for future Arkansas State University students pursuing an education in the medical field. You can feel her spirit all over that small town, just as it once always was. She's still around, just in a very, very different way. Her friend Melanie said Sydney's life was beautiful. Sydney was probably the best part of what any human wants to be. Story 4. She was the most innocent of innocent victims. The judge in this case has been on the bench for nearly 30 years. We are told that this case was the most difficult one of her career. This should have never happened. I'm very upset about it. This could have been my granddaughter, my daughter. This is somebody's child. Everyone felt this loss in a way that I have not witnessed in some time. We put everything we could out there to find her and bring her home safely. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. January 26, 2017, Cleveland, Ohio, 4 p.m. Alianata Fries still hadn't come home from school. This was very out of character for the 14-year-old. Her mother, Dinanisha, called the school to see if they knew anything about where she was or why she was delayed. What they told her made her stomach drop. Aliana hadn't been to school that day. She had set off at 6:30 a.m., more than enough time to get there. So why hadn't she turned up? Aliana had last been seen getting onto an RTA bus near the 3400 block of East 149th Street, the same bus stop her mother Walked her to that morning. She would then get off that bus at East 93rd in Kinsman and transfer to a second bus to get to school. She attended E-Prep and Village Prep Woodland Hills where she was in the 7th grade. She's never done this before. Her aunt said she's not known to run away. She's never run away. She's never been in any type of trouble. There's no reason for her to run away from home, so this is very unlike her. Aliana had been at E-Prep for 2 years, and while she was there a new system had been brought into place. School administrators would send automatic messages to parents with news to do with their children, including if they failed to show up for school, but her parents hadn't received any notification. Aliana, who had a developmental disability, was extremely loving and adored her close family, who adored her just as much. In return, she was bright and bubbly, never without a smile on her face, and now the community were out in full force trying to find her. Luckily, the buses she traveled on were covered by a network of security cameras, and when they found the footage there, she was going about her day as normal. So what had happened to her when she stepped off the bus then? Something caught their eye. A man in a white hoodie was standing behind her and then followed her. The temperature was dropping and snow was falling. This was a race against time to find her. Multiple special agents and intelligence analysts were drafted in to help in the search. The investigators needed to establish a timeline by talking to her family, friends, classmates and teachers. What was her normal routine? The police spoke to everyone in her circle, but nothing of note came up. Houses of her friends and family had also been searched, but she was nowhere to be found. It was now becoming clear that there was a new disturbing idea they were going to have to look at. Had this been a stranger abduction? A group of officers were dispatched to canvass and search local abandoned houses in the area. This was an enormous task, but the police and community were ready. They were going to search for as long as it took in the freezing conditions to bring Aliana home. A citywide search was now underway, and a reward for any information that led to her was offered. But just a few hours later, the news everyone had been dreading would break. There has not been a positive identification of the victim found in that house on Sunday night, and until there's positive scientific evidence, we're not going to announce who that person is. We have a very strong idea based on evidence and things like that of who that person is, and we've talked to that family. We're in constant contact with that family, but until the medical examiner makes that positive identification, we don't have an announcement for that. In reference to the individual whose remains were found on Sunday night and transported to our office, as the chief said, a positive identification has not been made. Those remains are of a young black girl, and one of our leading considerations is of the person who was reported missing, the 14-year-old girl. There were several abandoned houses near the 9400 block of Fuller Avenue, not far from where she changed buses. As one of the officers went into one of the abandoned houses, he found a body. She was naked and lying in a pool of blood. There was a trail of blood leading to the dining room, and laid out in there on a built-in bench were several tools, including a drill and box cutter. The injury she had sustained matched these tools. There was also a footprint found. The medical examiner found extensive injuries, including a broken jaw and stab wounds. The injury she had sustained was so severe the medical examiner was unable to determine an exact cause of death. She also had to be identified via dental records. The community was devastated. Many left flowers and teddy bears outside of the house in tribute to her. The pain and anger everyone felt was palpable. This was a vulnerable child, one of their own, who was simply making her way to school. Nobody could understand it. Who are we here for? Our job. Who must we stand for? Our job. Who must we speak for? Alana, because she can't be here tonight to speak for herself. This should have never happened. I'm very upset about it. This could have been my granddaughter, my daughter. This is somebody's child. I'm very pissed off about it. This is what community is about, and we appreciate the support that you're showing Alana and her family, and I'm sure they appreciate it. I want you to know that the men and Women of the Port District, our hearts are broken because of this. This is our community too. One of our girls in this community that this happened to. We're working very hard to find out who did it and bring them to justice. This case was now fast moving, and before long there would be more breaking news. February 2017, an arrest was made. So let's stay on this now and ask the question, who is Christopher Whitaker? There are a lot of pieces of the puzzle. So anybody that has any information on this suspect Christopher Whitaker, his whereabouts over the last week, anybody? He may have talked to Whitaker, arrested right here about 4 hours ago at the Villa Serena Apartments on Mayfield Road in Mayfield Heights by Cleveland police and federal marshals. 44-year-old Christopher Whitaker was taken into custody at 7:15 p.m. in Mayfield Heights. He did have a criminal record and was a registered sex offender, having served 4 years in prison for felonious assault and sexual battery after raping and attacking a woman in 2005. Then he grabbed me around my neck and was choking me, and I passed out. And 12 years after, she was strangled, brutally raped, and left unconscious in her own home. Emotional and physical scars remain. When they found her body, it was like something came over me and said, Chris did that. Chris Whitaker, accused of murdering 14-year-old Aliana DeFries and dumping her body in this vacant home, was convicted 12 years ago of sexually assaulting this woman, whose identity we're not revealing, but the original charge of attempted murder was pled down. It's like my life didn't matter to them. As a result, he served just 4 years in prison, and a person can go out and sell drugs and get more time than they gave him. Now Whitaker's 2005 victim says the system has a second chance to get it right. He took a kid's life, and to me, when you take a kid's life, a life for a life. Christopher Whitaker's DNA was found on Aliana's body, and inside the house she was found in. He was interrogated over the course of several hours. He said he hadn't seen Aliana and hadn't even been in the area that day. He didn't even know who she was. Are you familiar with the girl that went missing? I do not know anything. You don't know her. But then when he was presented with the evidence that had been gathered, his story suddenly changed. If I was to tell you that we found your DNA inside the house in the upstairs, would that surprise you? Probably. Through the kitchen, maybe. What did you do is what I'm asking, Chris. I turned around and it's like I punched her, but then it's like after that it's like a blur. It's like I almost blacked out or something. I don't remember what I did. I just remember when I came through that it had happened, and I'm not a monster. I'm just an addict that made a mistake. What shouldn't have happened. She never had a chance to grow up, never had a chance to experience anything, and I took that away from her, and there's nothing I can do to bring her back. I was so high and I was so out of my mind, and it was like I was out of character, and I got what I got coming, and I deserved it. I will write a formal apology to her family that they probably don't want to hear, but I will do it anyway. I just don't want a service made out of this. I just want to go to court and get it over with. He now said that she had chosen to follow him to the house after he said he was going to take drugs. He said he mistakenly believed she was a sex worker despite her being in her school uniform. He said she had taken her clothes off and, quote, offered herself to him before she suddenly attacked him. He said that the drugs he had taken that day had caused him to black out, and he couldn't remember anything else. There was no evidence at all to suggest that she had attacked him. This story was as far-fetched as they came, and it was not stacking up. If what he was saying was true, why had a witness seen Christopher grabbing Aliana before walking away with her? The witness said he didn't intervene or call the police because he didn't know if they knew each other. CCTV had also captured this moment. Thank you. The defendant is remanded. There is no bond. It's without bond, and the case is assigned to Judge Carolyn B. Friedel, and the first pretrial is set for February 22, 2017 at 9:00 a.m. and the court is appointing Mr. Thomas Shunzi and Mr. Fernando Mack to represent the defendant, Mr. Whitaker. It was now time for this to be presented before a court, and the trial of Christopher Whitaker began. Christopher Whitaker sat stoic with his hands clasped the entire day of trial, even while the prosecutor's opening arguments described the horrific details of how Alianata Freeze died, wounds made by a box cutter, putty knife, screwdriver and electric drill. Christopher Whitaker won't contest the aggravated murder, rape and kidnapping charges against him. The defense didn't cross-examine any witnesses, but the jury will have to endure days of morbid testimony, it seems. The defense may wait until the death penalty phase to make their case. Meanwhile, Aliana's mother testified she never went anywhere without telling me. When you learned that she hadn't been in school at all that day, what did that cause for you? Panic. Her family did not attend, but her father did comment outside, no matter what sentence he has or what fate he reaches, you know they say all time heals all wounds. This is what I don't think would be able to be healed. His lawyers didn't argue with what the prosecution said. The chain of events was he wasn't denying the crime, and his defense was going to be used in the penalty phase of the trial in a bid to save him from the death penalty. Prosecutors said that Christopher had gone out hunting that morning for a victim when he came across Aliana. He then abducted and methodically brutalized her. They said a psychologist brought in by the defense said Christopher's drug abuse had impaired his ability to control his impulses. Prosecutors argued that he was well aware of what he was doing that day. The evidence does not point to a drug-induced frenzy, does not point to a blackout. It points to that he knows what he's doing. The prosecution said the tools that had been found at the house and used in the murder were also shown to the court, painting a tragic and terrifying picture of Aliana's last moments. March 13th. The verdict was in. The court has been advised that you've reached a verdict, ladies and gentlemen. Jury number 3. Mr. Ford Personson, would you hand the verdict forms to the bill, please? In the matter of the State of Ohio versus Christopher Whitaker, and gentlemen, you can see the number of forms that there are with respect to count number 1, the aggravated murder. The verdict form reads as follows: we, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn, do find the defendant Christopher Whitaker guilty of aggravated murder in violation of Revised Code Section 2903.01b of the Revised Code as charged in count 1 of the indictment. It is signed by juror number 3, the foreperson, as well as the 11 other panel members. With respect to count number 2, again the verdict is guilty. With respect to count number 3, again the verdict is guilty. With respect to count 4, again the aggravated murder indicates that the defendant isn't that guilty. As to count number 5, the rape, the verdict form indicates a guilty verdict. I don't care whether you were the Aryan Brotherhood, the Black Gangster Disciples, the Mexican Mafia, they have one common denominator: they hate sex offenders and child murderers. I never wanted this to happen, and ever since that day I've been filled with regret and remorse. I've admitted to my guilt to the detectives and to my lawyers. I ask my lawyers not to contest or challenge anything in this case because I really want the Dupre family to have closure. I will not try to hide behind drugs or alcohol. I will not pretend or lie because it wouldn't be fair to the family. I apologize to the family and the community for my actions. There is no excuse for what I've done. I can't imagine the pain the family feels, but I know the pain I felt when I had to look at what I've done. As this was a capital murder case, the next phase for the jury would be to decide on the punishment. Would he spend the rest of his life behind bars, or would he be sent to death row? A judge has agreed with the jury and just sentenced Christopher Whitaker to death. She also added 48 years for the charges of obstruction of justice, aggravated burglary, felonious assault, rape and gross abuse of a corpse. We didn't get the verdict we wanted. We preferred a life without the possibility of parole, but we respect the judge's decision. Our children mean a lot to us. They might not be your children, but they mean a lot to us. The 93rd is a safe haven for sexual predators like this monster behind me, and you're lucky I'm not the same person I was 25 years ago. Because there's not enough police here to stop me, and you need to know that. And when you get where you're going to get what you got coming before you get to that gas, that lethal injection chamber. She would talk to me Daddy, you showed me how to fight. I'll be okay, Daddy, I said. Baby, listen to me, quit running your mouth, don't walk with your hood on your head, don't have the earbuds in your ear, be aware of your surroundings. She kept running her mouth. And I grabbed her. I said, that's how it's going to happen, Aliana. I said, that's how it's going to happen now. What are you going to do? Wow, Daddy, you scared me. I said, yeah, Lord, give me strength to continue on this foundation and keep my mind right and my spirit right. Excuse me, so I can look at this __ ass dude you're addressing the court, Mr. DeFries, not me. I said, enough, thank you, Your Honor, thank you. With respect to sentencing as to the non-capital charges, Mr. Almodovar, he would later appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court in a bid to overturn his death sentence and instead have it be life without the possibility of parole. Aliana's father said this would suit him. I requested life in prison without the possibility of parole from the beginning. Because death is too certain, too quick. You deserve to suffer and sit there and think about what you did. The hearing was an automatic appeal that Christopher was allowed to have due to being on death row. His lawyer said that his admission to the police and not contesting his guilt at trial should have been a factor for the jury to consider, but they didn't, as they were not made aware of his admission until later on in the trial. These were part of 21 legal issues his lawyer brought to the Ohio Supreme Court. Christopher didn't appear for the hearing as this was a capital murder charge. It had been prosecuted differently if a plea isn't made before the trial commences. Defendants in Ohio cannot plead guilty during the guilty phase, which is when the jury decides on guilt. The argument was made that when they were in that phase and deciding on if the sentence should be life or a death sentence, he had taken responsibility, and this should have been a mitigating factor. He wanted to accept responsibility. His lawyer said he wanted. He told police to avoid a circus. He told police to provide closure for the family. Assistant prosecutor Catherine Elizabeth Mullen told the Ohio Supreme Court he tried to claim responsibility and admit responsibility to some extent, but then if you look at his statements, if you listen to his jail calls, he makes denials. She said he makes a lot of denials, and this court has previously said that those denials negate the mitigating weight that this court might otherwise have given in an acceptance of responsibility. The Ohio Supreme Court unanimously upheld 2 of the 3 capital convictions. He would therefore remain on death row, and his original sentence stood. Christopher Whitaker's execution has been scheduled for July 2026, but there haven't been any executions in the state since 2018, as there has not been a replacement found for the lethal injection drugs. In December 2018, the abandoned house on Fuller Avenue was demolished. It's something that is a scar on top of a scar. The back doors were kicked open, the boards were off the walls. Someone got inside the house on Fuller Avenue where Christopher Whitaker raped and murdered their 14-year-old daughter Aliana. This worries Damon DeFries because he believes these vacant homes aren't safe. And what happened to his daughter could potentially happen to someone else, because lives are at stake. People don't get it. Lives are literally at stake. And just 1 month later, Aliana's alert bill was signed into law. This new law required all schools to alert parents within 2 hours if their child failed to turn up for school. Her family would also go on to file a wrongful death lawsuit. The defendants included Christopher Whitaker, E-Prep and Village Prep, Woodland Hills, the City of Cleveland, Friends of Breakthrough Schools, and the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. The owner of the house was also named for failing to maintain, operate and monitor the house. She was found in. Their lawyer said, unfortunately, when these cases happen, you have to hold every single person accountable. You can't let anyone off the hook, and here everyone played a role. The lawsuit alleged that the school utterly and without question breached a critical duty owed to each and every parent to provide notice of a missing child. It was also argued that the City of Cleveland and its employees breached their duties by failing to monitor and prevent illicit activities in abandoned properties, including the one her body had been found in. The family was seeking $15 million in compensatory and punitive damages. They would later reach a settlement of a reported $1 million. The work of Aliana's family in the wake of her murder has been nothing short of incredible. They have gone above and beyond to ensure that her name continues to live on. Through the good work they do and their service to their community, in her memory her family started the Aliana Dear Let's Make a Change Foundation, a non-profit organization to help low-income families, and it also aims at tackling the issue of abandoned homes and safe routes for children to get to school. Tonight Aliana Dear's family will be helping other families around the holiday season. They're partnering with Toys for Tots to hand out toys to children who might not otherwise get many gifts this year. Ariel Dear is Aliana's cousin. She tells me she's keeping her spirit alive by giving others a safe place to grieve and work through their trauma. She's doing this through creating the Centers for Counseling and Trauma Recovery. You may have seen walls of love around Cleveland or even around the country. They're filled with essential items to help people in their time of need, and today they celebrated a really special milestone, the 500th wall, and one dedicated in honor of Aliana Dear. Aliana Dear was a bright, creative, joyful young girl who should have had her whole life ahead of her. The grief left in the wake of her murder is something no family should ever have to endure, and yet in the face of that pain her loved ones have chosen action. Through education, advocacy and community engagement they've built a legacy in her name, one that protects other children and keeps her light alive. This was a crime that should never have happened, but from its devastation has come a call for change, and that perhaps is the most powerful testament to someone who should still be here. Story 5. 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell lived in Waunakee, Washington, and split her time between her mom and dad's house. She was about to graduate from high school and was also a cosmetology student training to become a hairstylist. Another passion for her was music and dance, often performing with her school's dance group, the Apollodes, in local parades and festivals. Described as a sweet, chatty and family-first person, Mackenzie had grown a lot in confidence, but it hadn't always been this way for her. Another big thing she wanted to do was to get surgery to correct an underbite, which she had sadly faced bullying for over the years. Her reverend said every day somebody teased her, but Mackenzie never allowed herself to be put down. The teasing and bullying only made Mackenzie stronger. Her father said he was always in awe of how much she worked. Her day started just after 6 a.m. and she wouldn't be back until 12 hours later. School, dance, modeling, and recently enrolling in the Waunakee Academy of Hair Design for some extra school credits. Her drive and work ethic was something to be admired for someone so young. She was in a relationship with Joaquin Villasano, who was smitten with her, and the young couple were pretty inseparable. Things were going well and looking bright for Mackenzie Cowell, and everything was falling into place for her. On February 9, 2010, Mackenzie's dad, Reed, had planned a father-daughter dinner at home. Mackenzie was always busy, so getting together for some proper catch ups over some nice food was something everyone looked forward to. Reed knew that the academy got out at 5:00, but unusually he didn't hear from her to say that she was leaving, and on the way about 40 minutes later he called her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. It didn't ring once. He said this instantly made his stomach lurch a little bit. An hour would pass and then another. At around 8:00 p.m. as her family were about to make the call to police, Reed got a call from them himself. His old car, mainly driven by Mackenzie, now had been found at Pitcher Canyon. This was miles away from the beauty school. Reed explained that his daughter was driving it that day, but the officer said there was no sign of anyone anywhere. Reed headed straight over. It was freezing cold, pitch black, and snow was starting to settle. It was such a remote location you would really need a specific reason to be there, especially at this time. Long winding roads along the hills with no lights for miles. The car had been left there to be hidden. As Reed was driving, he suddenly saw the Roads illuminated by the flashing lights coming from the police car, everything instantly felt so much more serious and scary. Her vehicle was locked, but they could see Mackenzie's purse and some clothing inside. Once open, they realized that her keys, phone and bank cards were missing. There was one set of footprints in the snow leading away from the car, so it didn't seem like more than one person had been in the car when it was left there. The investigation into the disappearance of Mackenzie Cowell began, and Reed described it as a long, dark, evil night. Gibson Chelan County need your help tonight. Finding a missing 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell was last seen Tuesday in Waunakee as she left beauty school. Her car was found several hours later 40 miles from her home. KXLY4's Annie Bishop is live in our studio with information on the search. Annie, and it has been an exhaustive search. They've searched the steep terrain where her car was found with bloodhounds by air and on foot several times, and still nothing, and that is why it is so important for you to take a good look at her photo tonight. Investigators hope you have seen Mackenzie and can help bring her home. Mackenzie's 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix was found abandoned off Pitcher Canyon Road around 7:00 Tuesday night, 40 miles from her home in Arando. Inside her car, detectives found her purse and clothes, but her debit card was missing. The Washington State Crime Lab processed that car and found nothing out of the ordinary. Mackenzie has been listed as an endangered missing person. The criteria surrounding her disappearance does not meet Amber Alert standards as of tonight. 5 FBI agents and 7 detectives are trying to figure out what happened to Mackenzie. Well, it's unusual for the caliber of this kid. From what we're getting from Mackenzie's past, she's not a troubled kid. She's a good student. She's a smart kid. She's involved in a lot of community functions, and Wachi just doesn't have a violent abduction of children crime rate at all. And Mackenzie is 5 feet 8 inches in 110 pounds with brown eyes and brown hair. She has braces and both ears pierced. If you have any information, you're asked to call this tip line at 509-667-6848. Now an FBI profiler, we're told, is on his way from Washington, D.C. to help put together a profile for Mackenzie and also a profile for a potential suspect. Right now they do not have a suspect. Moore told me that parents in the area should be concerned until they know what happened to Mackenzie. Reporting live, Annie Bishop, KXLY4 HD News. Detectives went back to the beauty academy, and Mackenzie's classmates said that she had told them she was leaving to take a 15-minute break and wanted to know if she needed to sign out. Sure enough, surveillance video showed her walking out of the back door at 3 p.m. She hadn't said where she was going to anyone, but no one had really thought anything of it. At 3:42 p.m. her boyfriend got a message from her simply saying, "Hey, what's up?" which he replied to saying, "Hi, normal chat." But after that there was nothing from her, it seemed. This was the last time her phone was used. Her debit card only had about $20 on it at the time, so she would only use it for very small expenses. But a couple of days later there had been no activity on her card. 3 residents reported seeing a slim, tall white male with very dark hair and a long dark coat walking down from the road. Mackenzie's car was dumped on. This was between 4:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. Authorities started poring over more than 1,000 pages of Mackenzie's phone records. They also got warrants for her Facebook and MySpace accounts. One reporter recalled everything was suspicious right off the bat and noted that the police never called this case a runaway. It already seemed like something far darker was going on. The search intensifies near Waunakee for a missing 17-year-old girl. It's been 72 hours since Mackenzie Cowell was last seen leaving beauty school in Waunakee. For the 4th time this week, FBI agents and local detectives have searched the area where Mackenzie's abandoned car was found, and still have not come up with anything to lead them to Mackenzie or what happened. Flyers have been posted everywhere in Waunakee hoping someone will recognize Mackenzie or her car. After 4 days of being missing, everything would change and people's fears would be realized. We begin tonight with breaking news out of Douglas County, where the body of 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell has been found on the shore of the Columbia River. Investigators are keeping quiet about what was found at the scene and in this home 30 yards from the body. We don't know where she was killed. We are hoping that the autopsy and the crime scene investigation that's going to occur tomorrow at the hospital will hopefully lead us to some conclusions on that. The sheriff is not calling what was found evidence, just clues in their search, a search that so far has no suspects. She was still in her beauty school uniform and had been beaten, stabbed and strangled. An autopsy confirmed that she had no drugs or alcohol in her system and she had not been sexually assaulted. But an attempt to cut off her arm after she was dead had been made, and a serrated knife was found in her shoulder. Some duct tape was also found near her body. Today dive teams returned to the water near where Mackenzie's body was found. They've cased the entire resort area of Crescent Bar. Still no suspects. Authorities say her killer could be someone Mackenzie knew, or it could be an unknown predator. Mackenzie Kell found dead in the Columbia River this morning as text messages spread among Wanashea High School students. Investigators spread out across 2 eastern Washington counties searching for clues. Detectives searched through Mackenzie's cell phone records today but couldn't find anything substantial. Police said they knew their work was already cut out for them, but the hunt for Mackenzie's killer was now on. 1,800 people came together for a memorial service for the 17-year-old. Detectives soon needed more help and the FBI got involved. They also formed the Mackenzie Kell Task Force, pulling resources from as many places as they could across the region. Police always start with those closest to the victim, so they looked at Mackenzie's boyfriend as well as her mother Wendy's boyfriend, Joey. They said her parents were never ever considered persons of interest. We was happy to take a polygraph but apparently failed it on one question. He said the police asked him, "Do you know who killed Mackenzie?" And they kept saying, "I failed that question," he said, but he maintained he had no idea who had done it. He didn't even have a hunch. He was shaken up, on edge, and understandably not himself at all. Joey had allegedly gotten into an argument with Mackenzie the day before she went missing, but both he and Waken were completely ruled out, and investigators had to expand the circles they were looking at after a few promising leads that sadly went nowhere. Police spoke to a former drug dealer and drug addict turned police informant, Liz Reed. She had a shocking story to tell them. Liz implicated 2 drug dealers, Sam and Emmanuel, and she had seen a snuff film of Mackenzie's death. She said that the teen had been murdered in a case of mistaken identity. She added that Sam told her, "I choked that __ to shut her up." Liz was even able to describe the murder weapon before it had been made public and gave the police a ring, which she said belonged to Mackenzie. She told them Emmanuel had sent her to the scene of the murder to collect the ring, a different location to where she was found. No one in Mackenzie's life recognized the ring though, and although they scrutinized the men she had pointed the finger at phone records and their employers ruled them both out. Emmanuel said he had been working hard to change his life and raise his young son, and this accusation set him back in many ways. They searched for this alleged video for ages but couldn't find a single thing. Police started to question Liz's credibility and she eventually withdrew her statement, but she still maintained she had seen a video of Mackenzie. Liz said she withdrew out of fear that the police were going to charge her with murder, despite the fact the police had never said anything like that. With this going nowhere over the next 7 months, police looked into hundreds of leads and interviewed more than 800 people. The investigation was slow but as thorough as it could be. Reed said he had absolute faith in the team and knew they were leaving no stone unturned to get answers for them. A local mother breaks her silence about the unsolved murder of her teenage daughter for more than 3 months now. The mysterious murder of 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell has tormented her city with fear. Frustrated detectives and broken the heart of Mackenzie Cowell's mother, so tonight she's calling out for justice. I know that you out there know who did this, and it's important to my family and I for you to bring that person forward. We were asked from the very beginning to not speak about the case. We didn't want to wreck the integrity of the investigation, and the only thing worse than losing a child is having the perpetrator not caught. But now this same week police publicly declared no member of the Cowell family is under investigation. Detectives urged Mackenzie's mother to talk to Cairo 7 in hopes that what she has to say will bring new witnesses forward. Even if it's a silly tip, it could be the answer that they're looking for. They have a lot of evidence, they just don't have the right tip. Police have followed 750 tips. They've interviewed hundreds of people and taken DNA samples from dozens. None of that has led to the killer, and the hope is tonight's interview with Mackenzie's mom will lead to a break in the case. We have to honor that person that she was and the person that she would have become. Because I never get to see that, I'm never going to be the grandma her brothers don't get to be uncles, and it's important that people call that tip line. Finally, another police informant, Theo Keys, sent detectives a letter from prison which would open everything up again. Theo gave them the name of a man he thought they should look into, a former friend of his, 29-year-old Christopher Wilson. Theo told them that Chris had completely out of nowhere started choking a mutual female friend at a party, then let her go and carried on as if nothing had happened. He also knew that he studied at the same academy as Mackenzie and lived just a couple of blocks away from the school. Other acquaintances of Chris said that he was definitely an odd person but seemed quiet and polite nonetheless. The more they looked into him, the more he stood out. He had an obsession with death, dead bodies and serial killers. He had a tattoo of Hannibal Lecter and idolized the show Dexter. Chris had worked at several funeral homes in the area, and another student at the academy said he had told her he liked to cut people up when he was working on them. Another person said he told her he used a belt to strangle a guest at a hotel. Chris's mom said that being different didn't make you a bad person, and his best friend said the same. He's not a perfect person, but he's a good person, she said, describing him as kind and generous. The only reason they said Chris stood out so much was he didn't fit the mold of what most people looked like and dressed like in the area. His dyed jet black long hair, different tattoos and more eccentric clothing was a stark contrast to most residents, but being quirky or different didn't make you a killer. The description the three people gave of a slim man walking near the area closely matched Chris too. Chris had been at the beauty school the same day Mackenzie went missing and actually left the building less than 2 minutes after she did, out of the same back door. But interestingly, they couldn't pinpoint where he was the rest of the day. He sent a few texts to his ex-girlfriend, but no one had seen him otherwise, so he had no alibi. But Chris had no criminal record at all, so police wondered if this was another dead end. Chris was denying everything, saying Mackenzie wasn't even an acquaintance, just someone who studied at the same place as him. He had no idea who she was and even volunteered to give a DNA swab. Despite his seeming openness, this was where everything started to change. His DNA came back as a match to the duct tape found near her body, and given how remote that area was, it seemed so unlikely that this was any kind of coincidence. They asked if he had ever been near that area, giving him the chance to offer up some kind of explanation, but he said he hadn't been there and had no reason to go. Detectives then told him about his DNA on the tape. He immediately asked for a lawyer, bringing everything to an end. Investigators also had a look at his obsession with the show Dexter and the fact that there had been an attempt to cut Mackenzie's arm off. The main character, Dexter Morgan, kills people and cuts them up before disposing of them in the Atlantic Ocean's Gulf Stream. Detectives had enough to place him under arrest on suspicion of secondary murder, and when they said this to him, he just stared at them blankly. The murder of 17-year-old Mackenzie Cowell, and that suspect is a 29-year-old man who went to beauty school with Mackenzie. Police say this man, Christopher Wilson, left school At the same time as Mackenzie on the last day she was seen alive, KXY4's Tori Brunetti is in Wanakee tonight with what finally cracked this case. For 8 months the community and her family had no idea who killed her. Few developments, few clues and hundreds of leads that came up short until a DNA match came through last month, and today police say they arrested her killer. Earlier today the Mackenzie Cowell task force arrested 29-year-old Christopher Scott Wilson from his home beneath this hair salon behind me. They say DNA evidence found on a duct tape where they recovered Cowell's body is what led them to this arrest. Investigators say Wilson went to the Academy of Hair Design at the same time as Cowell, but friends of Cowell say she was not friends with Wilson. People who knew both Cowell and Wilson say he seemed like a normal nice guy. He even went to Cowell's memorial and was comforting her. Close friends and family say they are very relieved that an arrest has been made, but they are shocked it was Wilson. Task force says they have a lot of work ahead of them right now. They're really focusing on trying to determine a motive in Wanakee. Tori Brunetti, KXY4 HD News. More searches were going on in and around his old apartment and his devices. A dark stained patch of his carpet was tested. Something Chris said had come from spilling water when he dropped a bong on the floor, but testing would prove otherwise. It was Mackenzie's blood, and there was a lot of it. Police could now tell she had been killed inside his apartment. It is unknown what conversations took place between Mackenzie and Chris, if any, or how she ended up in his building. They didn't seem to be friends on social media, but her father Reed said she would never have gone with anyone she didn't trust. Did they talk in school more than people realized? Was she forced there or lured there? It really is not known. Watchy police have made a second arrest in connection with the Mackenzie Cowell murder case. Now 22-year-old Tessa Maria Skyman was arrested in connection with this case. Another twist in an already dark case came when police announced a second arrest had been made. 22-year-old Tessa Skyman, a friend of Chris's, she was arrested on suspicion of first-degree rendering criminal assistance and obstructing a public officer. Detectives said photos found on Chris's computer showed Tessa seemingly posing on a spot on the floor of Chris's apartment where Mackenzie's blood had been found, but Tessa told police she was photographed by Chris without realizing she was on the stain. A video had also been found taken when Chris was moving out of his apartment. He could be overheard asking Tessa if it looked clean. She replied. During the video the camera zoomed in right on all of the blood stains on the carpet. Chris said the video was because he was moving out and wanted to prove he had cleaned up enough to get his security deposit back. The Wanakee Police Department arrested the 22-year-old last night, charging her with rendering criminal assistance and obstructing the investigation into Mackenzie's murder. Detectives found pictures of her posing as a dead person on the floor of Wilson's apartment where Mackenzie was killed, and in the exact spot where detectives would later find the teen's blood. A search warrant also uncovered 2 cell phone videos of Skyman walking through the same apartment, zooming in on areas where detectives found Mackenzie's DNA. Skyman claimed to have no knowledge of what happened to the Watchy team. Detectives say she has posted bond. However, although arrested, Tessa would never be charged. Chris was held on $1 million bond and entered a plea of not guilty. The man accused of killing a 17-year-old That girl faced a judge in a packed courtroom today and said he's not guilty. When Christopher Wilson walked into a Chelan County courtroom this morning, his mother started to cry. She's not the only one standing by side. He's innocent and he didn't. I don't believe he did it. This friend of Wilson, who didn't want to be identified, is one of many young women who believe in his innocence. I don't understand why he's getting accused of this. Robin Jones, a close friend of Mackenzie Cowell, doesn't understand how people who went to school with both Cowell and Wilson are so willing to believe he's not guilty. Mackenzie is the victim. Mackenzie didn't ask to be abducted. She didn't ask to be brutally murdered. She didn't ask to be dropped off on the banks of the Columbia River. She was 17 years old. She was an innocent, vibrant, exciting young woman. We still have evidence at the crime lab that's being analyzed. We continue to submit evidence to the crime lab for analysis. We continue to interview people who are involved with Mr. Wilson. What investigators don't have is a motive. Something Cowell's friends can only wonder. I don't think it had anything to do with Mackenzie. It was somebody who was sick and deviant, and she was easy prey. Chris's defense team were working hard to keep some things out of court, and eventually a judge barred prosecutors from introducing his work at the funeral home or mentioning his Hannibal Lecter tattoo. Leading his defense team was a very high-powered attorney, John Henry Brown. His past clients included Colton Harris, more known as the Barefoot Bandit, and serial killer Ted Bundy. His team even went as far to suggest that the case was corrupt and law enforcement could have planted Mackenzie's blood on his carpet. They said that the real killers were probably Sam and Emmanuel, the same people that Liz had pointed the finger at. Chris's mom said she believed there was a conspiracy against him to frame him as well. They also pointed out that his DNA was not found in her car or on the knife in her body. They also said that the ring Liz had allegedly retrieved for Sam and Emmanuel fit a ring Mackenzie was seen wearing in a photo, but the prosecution said there was no proof of this at all. The photo was not great quality for a start, and those closest to her did not recognize the ring was produced at all. But prosecutors were feeling confident about their case and even upgraded Chris's charge to first-degree murder, saying his actions constituted premeditation. Chris was facing up to 26 years if convicted. In April 2011, Chris rejected a plea deal which would see him get just 6 years in jail for manslaughter. People were shocked, as this seemed an extraordinarily good offer considering what he was facing. But just as Chris's trial was about to begin, he had a change of mind and requested the 6-year deal previously offered. He was maintaining his innocence but said he wanted to take a plea agreement because surveys of potential jurors found that most of those in the jury pool thought he was likely guilty. He said that this was already setting him up for an unfair trial. It was clearly going to be far better for him to just take the plea deal. But the first deal of 6 years was definitely no longer on the cards. Mackenzie's family also wanted him to write a statement which acknowledged what he had done. So in court, Chris's statement read, "This is my statement. I also did recklessly cause the death of Mackenzie Cowell by strangulation and by stabbing her with a knife." Mr. Wilson, is that your statement? Yes. And are those the things that you did? Yes, he said. Despite what he wrote, he didn't mean it because it wasn't true. It was really just written as part of the deal, and he believed he had been set up from the start. Chris pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter, first-degree robbery for taking Mackenzie's phone, and assault in an unrelated case in May 2012. After being told that the 6-year deal was off the table, Chris was sentenced to just over 14 years in prison with credit for the months already served. After he left the courtroom, Mackenzie's family and Chris's embraced and said sorry to each other. They had both lost a lot, and Mackenzie's family showed such grace in class. It was really admirable. Chris later tried to withdraw his guilty plea going to the Washington Court of Appeals, but this failed. After this, we flash forward to the end of 2023. 43-year-old Christopher Scott Wilson was freed from prison after serving 11 and a half years. 17 years old is simply no age at all, but at such a young age, Mackenzie's drive and work ethic was already setting her apart, and she was ready to take on whatever came her way to get where she wanted to be. Mackenzie's bedroom is still much the same as when she left that morning. Going into it is like going back in time to a time far less painful and more simple for her, to a day when Mackenzie would wake up to do the same things she always did: study, work, chat to her boyfriend, and catch up with her parents. Her father, Reed, said he has a wind chime outside, and every time it moves he hears his daughter's voice. It feels like she's still there with everyone talking. Reed said, "You are my special gift from God. You will never leave my heart. I can't Believe how much I miss you. Story 6. The soft clinking of coins echoes as they drop into the donation box at the foot of the Buddha statue. Each note carefully folded with the heartfelt reverence of devotees. No one could have imagined that the sacred stream of money meant for temple restoration and charitable deeds would silently flow into a shadowy gamble. Behind the majestic gates of War I King a staggering secret was brewing, and on a May morning in 2025 it erupted, shaking all of Thailand. War King, nestled in Nakhon Pathom province in central Thailand, has long been a revered and ancient temple, drawing countless locals and tourists daily to offer incense and prayers for blessings. The century-old sanctuary even houses a sacred relic, replica of the Buddha's footprint, deepening the devotion of pilgrims. The temple's abbot, Venerable Brahmacharanat Bornam Kaidano, was not only respected for entering monastic life at age 12 and dedicating over 50 years to spiritual practice here, but also for holding the prestigious position of head of Thailand's Sung Region 14, a high-ranking role in the country's Buddhist hierarchy. Under the guidance of this esteemed abbot, War King received abundant donations from devotees who believed their offerings would fund virtuous causes. Yet behind the dignified image of the abbot blessing the faithful, a silent storm was brewing within the temple's walls. Millions of baht in donations poured in with unwavering trust, but were they truly used to restore Buddha statues, cast bells, or aid the needy as intended, or had a significant portion been secretly diverted to darker purposes? The answer began to emerge through irregularities in the temple's financial records from 2021. Thai authorities detected suspicious withdrawals from War King's bank accounts. The temple maintains 7 accounts across various banks to manage donations for renovations, statue casting, bill payments, and charity. Funds flowed steadily into these accounts, fueled by the generosity of devotees, yet alongside the influx came large unexplained withdrawals, sums that vanished from the temple's accounts with no clear record of their purpose. Whispers of doubt spread among locals as renovation projects stalled despite steady donations. The tipping point came when an anonymous complaint reached investigators alleging that someone was embezzling temple funds for illicit personal gain. Notably, the complaint included information from a 26-year-old woman, a broker for online gambling sites. This unexpected lead put police on high alert. Could the temple's money be feeding a gambling ring? A covert investigation was promptly launched. Recognizing the gravity of the case, Thailand's Central Investigation Bureau (CIB) deployed seasoned detectives to infiltrate the temple undercover as ordinary devotees. For over 8 grueling months, the team meticulously traced the suspicious money trail, bank statements, and transaction records. Gradually painted a picture of a massive discrepancy between the donations received and the funds actually spent on temple activities. The investigation's findings stunned all. Whenever devotees' offerings arrived, Abbot Prathamakyawat instructed the temple's management or trusted aides to withdraw 1 to 2 million baht at a time, secretly funneling it into his personal account. From there, the money was transferred to the aforementioned female gambling broker, who fed it into online casinos primarily for baccarat games. In essence, the revered abbot had transformed sacred donations into gambling chips in a high-stakes digital underworld. Initial tallies revealed that in just 11 of the clearest transactions, Fred had funneled approximately 63 million baht, roughly $1.75 million to the gambling broker for wagering. The abbot's personal account was also linked to a web of other gambling-related accounts with total transactions exceeding 500 million baht, about $13.9 million, encompassing both wins and losses. These staggering figures exposed a systematic years-long scheme of embezzlement executed with chilling precision. Shockingly, in the grip of his gambling addiction, the abbot appeared to have drained the temple's coffers. As donations dwindled, he resorted to borrowing from fellow monks at other temples, with loans reaching hundreds of thousands or even $1 million. bought for a revered monk like Fratimir to borrow from peers signaled a gambler's desperation. He had likely lost everything and was scrambling to fuel his bets or patch the temple's financial holes. After nearly a year of gathering evidence, the police held a detailed dossier tracking the misappropriated donations on the morning of May 15, 2025, as authorities prepared to request an urgent arrest warrant for Venerable Fratimir the abbot. Perhaps sensing the net closing in, surrendered himself at 10:00 a.m. He arrived at the CIB headquarters in Bangkok accompanied by his lawyer and a few trusted monks. The 69-year-old abbot, clad in saffron robes, walked silently through the corridor, facing investigators awaiting him. Just hours earlier he had presided over the temple's main hall surrounded by hundreds of devotees. Now he stood as a suspect encircled by police, a jarring image that left Thailand reeling. Venerable Fratimir Wat in his saffron robes bowed his head at the CIB headquarters on May 15, 2025, a moment when a revered monk faced the weight of the law. The spectacle of the abbot being escorted to the police station sent tremors through Thailand's Buddhist faithful. The sight of a venerated monk draped in saffron robes standing in the austere halls of justice was unthinkable for many at the Central Investigation Bureau CIB. Fratimir cooperated but steadfastly rejected accusations of embezzlement and gambling. He insisted it was a misunderstanding, claiming the financial dealings had legitimate aims. Yet confronted with irrefutable financial records, his explanations failed to sway anyone. By midday, the Criminal Court for Corruption and Misconduct issued a detention order to facilitate further investigation. Fratimir Wat faced formal charges of embezzlement and exploiting his authority for personal gain, grave offenses typically leveled against public officials. His role as head of Sungha Region 14 granted him powers akin to a government functionary, leading Thai law to treat him as a corrupt official plundering public offers. Simultaneously, authorities apprehended Aranawa and Wang Apan, a 28-year-old woman who acted as the conduit for the abbot's gambling funds, previously arrested in 2024 for ties to a gambling syndicate and released on bail. Her continued role underscored the cunning and sprawling nature of the gambling network, which had long been under police scrutiny. As news of the era spread, the public reeled not only from the vast sums misappropriated but from the betrayal by a senior monk. Public outrage intensified because Fratimir Wat was still cloaked in monastic robes at the time of his arrest. Having not yet disrobed, many demanded to know how someone accused of defiling Buddhism's honor could still claim the mantle of a monk. This outcry spurred swift action. Soon after his detention, he was stripped of his robes, compelled to renounce his monastic status and face the law as a layperson. Local reports confirm he exited the SA shortly after his arrest. The scandal at Wat Reking extended beyond the abbot's downfall. As the investigation widened, police uncovered another pivotal figure, Ekot Phukang, a 25-year-old former aide to the abbot, once a young monk known as Phram Maha Eshapat. He was entrusted with key duties by Fratimir Wat. That trust was abused for illicit ends. On the night of May 16, 2025, just 24 hours after the abbot's capture, the Cybercrime Investigation Bureau CCB arrested Ekot at a government office in Bangkok under a court warrant. He was accused of deep complicity in the gambling scheme, routinely transferring large cash sums ranging from tens to hundreds of thousands of baht on the abbot's orders to Aranao and Wangapan's account. The critical link in the gambling pipeline. Before investigators, Ekot confessed to making the transfers but claimed he was unaware the money fueled online casinos. While this may have been a plea to mitigate guilt, his actions undeniably helped the abbot mask the scheme. For years he now faces a slew of charges promoting and facilitating online gambling, money laundering and aiding in money laundering. These allegations expose a sophisticated financial crime Syndicate operating within the temple. The arrests of the abbot, his aide and the broker reveal the broader scope of the scandal, not the solitary misdeed of a greedy individual but an intricate web of corruption and gambling woven into the fabric of a sacred institution. Thai authorities pledged to deepen the probe, vowing to follow every clue to expose any additional clergy or external accomplices involved in this shocking affair. Though what reeking stands as a sobering warning, crime can infiltrate even the most sacred spaces when oversight and accountability lapse. What led a revered monk who devoted decades to the temple to spiral into the abyss of gambling? The roots likely lie in a lethal mix of greed and gambling's addictive grip. Buddhist teachings condemn gambling for stoking desire, anger and delusion which corrode the mind and soul. Yet Father Mashin, what meant to embody these principles, succumbed to its lure. It may have started with a fleeting curiosity or a playful try, but the gambling maelstrom pulled him into a world where wins and losses drowned out reason as debt mounted. Rather than seeking redemption, he plunged deeper, covertly diverting devotees' donations to chase illusory victories, deluded by the hope of winning big to cover his tracks. This is the classic gambler's trap. The more they lose, the more frantic they grow. The more they chase, the further they fall. Power and greed may have further dimmed his judgment. Overseeing a prominent temple with donations flowing freely, he may have come to view the funds as his own to wield. The absence of independent financial oversight left a gap that Freight exploited unchecked. His high rank likely bred a sense of untouchability, convincing him his actions would go unquestioned or undetected. This belief in being above scrutiny is a perilous pitfall that fuels abuse and moral erosion. The tragedy of the saffron-clad gambler also lays bare a shadow in modern monastic life. When a monk holds vast wealth and worldly power, the risk of straying from spiritual discipline looms large. For years Father Mashiran what led a double existence. By day he performed rituals and accepted offerings with solemnity. By night he may have been fixated on online betting screens. The strain of balancing monastic vows with forbidden vices likely eroded his character, dissolving the boundary between right and wrong. By the time he grasped the depth of his descent, it was too late. The once esteemed monk had morphed into a compulsive gambler, dismantling over half a century of spiritual legacy with his own hands. In Thailand, where Buddhism is the national religion and monks are deeply revered, the what reeking scandal struck like a seismic jolt, fracturing public faith. As the story broke, Thai social media and forums erupted with anger and dismay. Many voiced disillusionment, some swearing off temple donations entirely. I'll give to hospitals or schools from now on, not temples, one ex-user wrote bitterly. Others sought to preserve their faith, cautioning against condemning all monks. For one man's sins not every monk is corrupt, don't judge them all. Another exposed urged, despite differing sentiments, Thailand's Buddhist community grapples with a profound crisis of trust. The Thai acted quickly to quell the unrest, compelling Pramuk Wat to disrobe and face justice was a first step towards cleansing the Dharma and rooting out a blemish in the monastic order. Prominent monks and Buddhist officials took to the media, urging devotees to remain calm, hold fast to their faith and trust that wrongdoers would face just punishment. They stressed that this scandal must serve as a wake-up call to tighten financial oversight in temples. Indeed, this brazen embezzlement exposed a glaring flaw. Temples receive vast donations but often lack transparent monitoring, unwittingly opening the door for exploitation. Meanwhile, Thai media delved into Pramuk Wat's past and criminal descent, painful details such as borrowing money from fellow monks to gamble or calmly performing rituals while siphoning funds, fueled public outrage. The scandal also evoked memories of recent financial controversies in Thai Buddhism. Just last year a similar case unfolded. The former abbot of Wat Pramukari Phrajankorn was sentenced to 468 years in prison for embezzling nearly $8.3 million in donations, though Thai law caps actual prison terms. The symbolic 468-year sentence underscored the judiciary's resolve to combat corruption among monks, yet this precedent seemingly failed to deter Framakir and others like him from their downward spiral after his arrest. Framakir now reverted to his lay name Yemen Krunko, and his accomplice Aaron Awan were transferred to Bangkok for further investigation at the Central Criminal Court for Corruption. Prosecutors finalized the indictment, charging him with embezzlement and abuse of authority for personal gain. His roles as abbot and senior SA official equated to a position of public trust. These are gravely serious corruption charges carrying potential sentences of decades in prison. During a hearing on May 17, 2025, the court approved an additional 12 days of detention for Yam and Aaron Yalan to support the ongoing investigation, rejecting bail request for both. Prosecutors cited the massive financial damage and the risk that if released the defendants could tamper with evidence or flee. Notably, Yam did not even apply for bail, resigning himself to remain in Bangkok's detention facility throughout the legal process at 69 after losing everything: his monastic career, reputation and freedom. Yam likely realized a harsh sentence was inescapable. As of early June 2025, the case remains under active investigation. Thai police continue to trace related assets and money flows while expanding the probe to other figures in the criminal network within the SA. The roles of Abbot of Wat Riking and head of Region 14 have been temporarily reassigned to other monks to restore stability to local religious life. Devotees still visit the temple to pray, but the atmosphere is forever altered, at least until justice is served and trust is rebuilt. If convicted, former abbot Yam Katantharu faces a severe penalty. Given the president of Frajon K's 468-year sentence for a comparable sum, Yam could receive a centuries-long symbolic sentence, though actual time served may be reduced under Thai law, which limits total imprisonment. He will almost certainly spend his remaining years behind bars for a man who devoted nearly his life to monasticism. This is a bitter and costly reckoning, a fitting end for one who betrayed the values he once embodied. The saga of Fatama is a tragedy on multiple levels: the fall of an individual, the wounding of a religious community's faith, and the misuse of sacred donations from a revered monk. He turned himself into a pariah who tarnished the sanctity of the temple. On a deeper level, the case sounds an alarm for Thai Buddhism. When wealth and worldly power infiltrate the spiritual realm without transparent oversight and steadfast virtue, even those in saffron robes can succumb to temptation for society. The Wat Riking scandal is a shock, but also a chance to reassess where trust is placed. As one frustrated netizen put it, rather than blindly tossing money into donation boxes, people might consider supporting other charities, or at least demand transparency in their offerings. Yet most Buddhists recognize that one bad apple shouldn't erode faith in the Dharma. Calls to avoid blanket judgment reflect hope that after this scandal, Thai Buddhism will purify itself and emerge stronger. And so today's case draws to a close. The image of donation money, symbols of devotion thrown into the fires of gambling, will haunt Thailand for years. The Wat Riking case will eventually conclude with fitting sentences for the guilty, but its echoes will linger as a costly lesson. It's a lesson about vigilance against greed, the necessity of transparency in all institutions, and above all about trust. Trust must be placed wisely, guided by reason rather than blind devotion. Only then can sacred offerings truly bring light to the world, rather than being lost to the dark gambles of stories like this one. As the rain gently falls and the night grows deeper, thank you for joining me here at Mr. Night Scared True Crime. Stories remind us of life's mysteries and the importance of staying aware even as we seek comfort in the quiet of the night. Let the rain carry you to a peaceful sleep, and until we meet again, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night watch over you. Videolitics.